This one I'll be talking about the overlap between the New Age QAnon and the Sustainable Development Goals. And as well, I'll be talking in a little bit more depth about some of these people's connections, such as the Nonvoy and as well Adrien Thomas of the Thunderbird Nationalist Movement, which is a political party. And just so people are aware, I have actually interviewed Adrien Thomas as well as Matthew Venn, formerly of the Nonvoy, but is now aligned with Adrien Thomas. So in this video here, Gordon claims he wants a de jure government. Maggie claims the exact same thing and shows a Druthers article that has to do with what her and her people are doing in their initiative. So I'm going to explain the difference between de jure and de facto here because Canada has a de facto government. So in law and government, de facto describes practices that exist in reality even though they are not officially recognized by laws. And in law and government, de jure describes practices that are legally recognized regardless of whether the practice exists in reality. So, and it says here in this little dot for dot comparison is that de facto is temporary, has factual recognition and no UN membership, but de jure means permanent legal recognition and as well UN membership. So it's interesting here because it's almost like telling you kind of what plans are in a very indirect way through this. And basically what happens is different tyrannical systems that people cannot stand, and when they're driven to a point of barely being able to live, where there is fear, anger, hyperinflation, and all kinds of stuff thrown at people left, right, and center, what ends up happening typically, look at France or Greece as an example, is there's a large revolt, but every time there is some kind of revolution, there is not really any sort of, there's no real change. It's just swapping out one tyrannical regime for another. And I think the word revolution even comes from revolve. So think about a revolving door. It goes in circles, right? So, and then also I'm just going to read a quote from the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, AIN, because AIN I've covered in previous videos. That's basically the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, which is a set of, let's say, fake native groups, if you will. I've covered what I mean by that. And as well, it includes the Hospitallers, which are better known as the Knights of Malta. So, in the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, they push forward Nisara, UNDRIP, and the Paris Agreement. So, basically with the Paris Agreement having to do with climate change BS, UNDRIP basically being a land grab that allots land and resource rights to quote-unquote indigenous people, not defining what indigenous means in the actor statute. And then as well, Nisara, Jisara, whatever, is a so-called return to a gold standard, but what they're referring to is the quantum financial system, which is just a blockchain ran system, and digital ID also runs on blockchain. So therefore, with this gold standard, if you will, which is just an illusion, all it is gold-backed NFTs, which is just a picture of a gold bar. It's not a real tangible asset. So this right here is Rise Together News, and basically what happens here is this is ran through somebody named Cindy K Courier over here, and that's somebody who Gordon is connected to, and I'm going to explain how this works. So since I actually had interviewed, it was either since I interviewed Matthew Venn or Adrien Thomas, I'm not sure, but this person who goes by Linda the Lighthouse, whose name is Irma Linda Serrano, who lives in Southern California, she seems to post all kinds of stuff having to do with what's called the Court of Ages, which I will get to. And she seems to post right directly on people's timelines, and she was posting QAnon crap on my timeline, and I had basically asked her not to. she didn't get the message in Messenger, continued to do so, so I just put my message onto one of her posts. So I just don't want my timeline flooding with crazy crap like that, with due respect. And stuff I don't support, most importantly. And then this is Cindy K's profile here, and we see she is mutual friends with Gordon. And while being mutual friends on Facebook is not enough, really, to say that they are directly affiliated, as we all have people on Facebook we don't really know, is what happens is there's a YouTube channel called Rise Together News, and with Rise Together News in its YouTube channel, basically they put out all kinds of content having to do with either the New Age or even stuff having to do with the non-void, and all kinds of different things there as well having to do with Turtle Island. And a lot of the videos start off with something that says Galactic Institute for Truth or Consequences, which is just really, it's a combination of propaganda and fear. Truth or consequences. So you'll have consequences if you don't accept the truth. And then Galactic Institute sounds a whole lot like Galactic Federation. And when it comes down to QAnon or the New Age, whether you're trusting the plan with Donald Trump or the Galactic Federation, it makes no difference. It's just one hopium figurehead for another. So this right here, calling all members of the indigenous tribe of Artemis. Interesting, as Artemis is goddess of the hunt and protector of nature. Her brother, male counterpart, is Apollyon. So this is called Operation Save Sophia on the Lake Elsinore mission. It appears Typhon and Echidna have taken form as Nevada Hydro and are closing in on Lake Elsinore. The sacred sky, water, and mountain of the entire area are under severe attack, which, as you know, threatens the very existence of humanity altogether. Public Order 968.1 calls for Airship Fortress to protect the land and free it from entities that would imperil the freedom and well-being of living systems in and around the area. The Artemis tribe is now called to reform and protect Lake Elsinore, banned at Lake Elsinore in Riverside County, California. And to those who are willing and able, report our duty immediately at Lake Elsinore. Follow the order of events for communities transitioning to natural law. And when they refer to natural law, there's actually a handbook that I will show very briefly. However, I do have to look over it in a little bit more depth to understand what they exactly mean by a transition to natural law in their context. So now I'm going to talk about who Typhon and Echidna are. So Typhon, otherwise known as typhus, you think about a typhoon, right? Like a hurricane, basically, when you hear this name. But this so-called monster, or typhus, or typhon, this snake-like man here, if you will, his mother is usually depicted as Gaia, which is a personification of the earth, and the son, or sometimes depicted as the son of Hera, which is Zeus's wife and sister, fun fact. And Typhon's mate is Echidna, and basically they spawned things like the Hydra, Cerberus, and the Chimera. And Typhus, or Typhon, Typhus, whatever, was born to challenge Zeus, the ruler of Olympians, but he failed in his challenge and was imprisoned beneath the earth. And the fire and smoke that poured from the volcanoes of Etna or Vesuvius were sometimes said to be caused by his thrashing as he struggled to burst free. Interesting. So then, Echidna. So another serpent-like deity over here. female serpent monster of Greek mythology, the daughters of those two sea gods over there, and she was represented by the head and torso of a woman and tail of a serpent, and she mated with Typhus, like I said, and they gave birth to Cerberus, Chimera, Hydra, and stuff like that, and she was supposedly slain by Argus, the 100-eyed giant. So Echidna and Typhus are basically what they're referring to as Nevada Hydro. So I'm going to have to look a little bit more into hydro companies, especially out in the US. So people who are unaware of my content, I am Canadian, by the way. So I'm in Southern Ontario, and I'm obviously not really too familiar with power companies out in the US, but I know that there is a sort of contract or something between Quebec and at least Maine. I don't know about the rest of the US, but I have to look a little bit more into power companies and as well Lake Elsinore to be able to talk about what is going on there, and if there are any Americans that want to freely send me a link or guide me in the right direction, that would be greatly appreciated. And then this is, of course, a depiction of Artemis, like I had shown. And then this is the YouTube channel here that have several videos, and I'm pretty sure, here, let me refresh the page here so that we can see it up to date with all of its new videos, if you will. Oh, looks like they uploaded some stuff very recently, as we can see here. But yeah, like all different kinds of content with their public orders and different new age stuff, and yeah, you name it. So anyway, gonna go over some little pictures here. So this is another thing about protecting Lake Elsinore here. So be it known, the airship fortress is hereby ordered to protect blah blah blah, and arrest anyone who, under color of law, attempts to harm or deprive living systems of rights protected by natural law. So, color of law is actually what police operate through, which is a system of consent and contract. So, that's what is being referred to. And then this is the airship fortress militia. I don't know why there is a picture of Medusa on it, and gazing into Medusa's face is what turns one into stone, so I'm not really sure of the symbolism they're going for here exactly. And then this is just a more clear view of the document that is shown here, not this indigenous tribe of Artemis, but this particular blue one, Order of Events for Transitioning to Natural Law. And one thing, sorry, I actually just noticed, is it says indigenous tribe of Artemis, so are they on board with UNDRIP here? Good question. So, Order of Events for Transitioning to National Law, it mentions here, I'm not going to read all of these in total depth because I'll be showing all kinds of these orders that they have here, but it mentions commissioning, community commissions, a council, and local sheriff who are committed to natural law as described in the Court of Ages, Law of the Land Handbook. And the sheriff answers to the airship fortress. So before I had, and then it says as well, sheriff makes the following orders and declarations, etc. So basically what I'm getting at here is that this right here is a constitutional sheriff's shirt. And this was a term that was thrown around at the time of Marcus Ray's prominence, and then we saw in one of Gordon's streams that he did, that he has a constitutional sheriff's shirt. And I also wanted to interview him, just like I've interviewed Matthew Venn and Adrien Thomas, but he pretty well deflected his way out of that. I don't have the screenshots offhand for how this happened, but they are in a previous video of mine, which I'll be linking all relevant videos that I touch on any of the subjects I'm speaking on in this video in the description. So with this sheriff's thing that I'm getting at is there a link there between Cindy Kay and what she describes as sheriffs versus this constitutional sheriff's gimmick thing here that is shown in Canada, and I know that there are different there's Constitutional Sheriff's Association out in the US as well, so I'm not sure about the exact similarities or be it what have you with the US in comparison to Canada with that. So this is Cindy K Courier, which is the person that Gordon is in contact with, who has Rise Together News. It says, my mission is to protect children, fortify families, and empower communities in transition to natural law. Natural law is the practice of maintaining wholeness among living systems in accordance with the laws of nature. In other words, when we act in a way that preserves the regenerative cycles of life, we practice natural law. The Law of the Land Handbook provides a unified way of living together by natural law and replaces corporate law forms. Dynamic governance. So this is the way they govern, control their organization or organizations attached to Rise Together or Cindy Courier, from what I imagine. Sociocratic ecclesias replace both democratic and republic forms of government. An ecclesia in a public meeting of community members who discuss and decide upon matters concerning the community as a whole. So I'm going to go over a little bit about what sociocracy is, and I can't remember if I said, but Cindy K. Courier is out in the U.S., so that's an interesting connection that Gordon has right to the U.S. Anyway, yes, sociocracy is a governance system, just like democracy or corporate governance methods. It's best suited for organizations that want to self-govern on the values of equality. Some people refer to sociocracy as dynamic self-governance or simply dynamic governance. And I'm not going to go over all the history and everything about it. I'm just going to kind of condense it, and people can read about it as much as they so choose, as links will be in the description, right? So basically you have circles of people, and you have different roles for different people within those circles, and those circles can branch into other, we'll say, sub-circles, for lack of better words. That's not the exact terms that they use on this website here. However, this is basically a very effective way of getting things done where everybody is working on their own designated tasks, and all of those tasks and stuff converge into one ultimate agenda, if you will. And this is also a great way to compartmentalize information and keep some people in the dark, actually. So a lot of people who get involved in organizations in the freedom movement, it's not much different than, say, getting involved in Freemasonry for the purpose of wanting to do community work. Somebody might have good intentions, and there might be some good people on the lower echelon, if you will, but they have no idea what's really going on, and kind of ultimately becomes a cult of the blind leading the blind, if you will, because you can convince good people to do bad things provided they don't know those things are bad, or to inadvertently cover up something where they have no idea what they're doing. So yeah, not really about joining the Masons, and I'm not really about joining any one of these organizations. If I'm honest with you, I've always felt that I'm best doing my own thing as, I guess, an independent researcher, reporter, whatever you want to call me. I don't really subscribe to labels. So it says, Sociocracy for All is a nonprofit that helps organizations, communities, workplaces, and collectives to learn how to organize in a decentralized way and make their decisions with equity, efficiency, empowerment, trust, and transparency using sociocracy. Our aim is to promote sociocracy locally and globally as a sustainable way of governance. Nice words. We do this by innovating, by making decisions together, and sharing what we learn. And so they take on contracts with all different types of organizations and groups and that kind of a thing. So I'm not exactly sure if this Sociocracy for All is actually partnered with Cindy K, or if just the philosophies and modalities and rubric, if you will, of sociocracy is just applied to her organization or what. But anyway, this is Cindy K Courier over here. It says that she's a law educator, public advocate, pioneering applied natural law in America. She successfully prosecuted the first case against the U.S. corporation to be heard in a natural law court. I am not sure about the validity of that. A former psychotherapist, she specialized in acute and post-traumatic stress. Using forgiveness as a healing modality, she now advocates forgiveness, restitution, and restoration as a moral way of administering justice for communities committed to protecting the earth, its ecosystems, and one another. Okay? Former psychotherapist, specialized in acute and post-traumatic stress, etc., etc. So it sounds like she has a real handle on understanding people's behaviors and perhaps even how to control or manipulate them from the sounds of that if she so desired. So this is the natural law handbook, if you will, and there's way too much here to read through all in one video if I have so much information to present, but I'm just presenting this here so that it's in the description and so that people can read for themselves what her goals are. So this is the Court of Ages, and again, you can see that little logo that's on the bottom there. That is the Court of Ages that you'll see, which is what Cindy K Courier is a part of, and also what seems to be posted on people's timelines like Gordon and some of the other non-void people and such like that. It says, established in 2013, according to the Gregorian calendar, the Court of Ages works to restore personal and national integrity to the original heirs and guardians of Earth. The court recognizes humanity as sole heirs of creation and brings action by natural law to defend their rights and protect their inheritance. And as well, I will be going over a little bit of what the Court of Ages is tied to in future videos, diving into this a little bit further, because I think this is playing a big role in perhaps linking the idea of sheriffs, and as well, this is just basically like more New Age babble over what it is that is already being spoken through the words of people like the non-boy, like Gordon, Colin Ross, and as well Adrien Thomas to some extent, which I'll be going over too. So this is just one small little segment about community sheriffs here. Sheriff is commissioned by the local community, and the sheriff's description is agreed upon by the community and aligns with natural law as conceived by Court of Ages law of the land, and the Civilian National Guard answers directly to the community sheriff. And once again, I have not studied the structure so rigorously of the Court of Ages. However, what I am just saying is that there is quite clearly a link between Gordon and his initiatives versus what Cindy K Courier is doing. And once again, I would have loved to interview you, Gordon. I would have loved to actually clear the air and speak about a few things, but I guess you didn't feel like it was important enough or something. And I get you're busy, doing whatever it is you're doing, but, I'd like to think that I asked some pretty good questions, and it would be pretty easy for you to be transparent and open and speak in a live stream where more people would actually see you there than probably at your own camp on stage. But you're lost, man. You're lost. So, moving forward, where was I? So, this says educating police here, basically. They talk about how there's a move toward a decentralized community-based protection, which is now required. So I don't really like the word decentralized here, if you will. And as well, it says to all police, your services are now required in a transition from centralized corporate law enforcement to community-based protection as described in Court of Ages Law of the Land Handbook. So it sounds very much like a replacement of one system for another, and every time this is attempted, generally through means of a revolution, just a more tyrannical system comes into the place of the pre-existing one. And the reason why I don't like the word decentralized is because this agenda is very centralized, and that word is just pretty much, you typically see it when they're talking about the blockchain in order to pitch, Bitcoin or whatever. But in this case, this is just a different centralized agenda, and decentralized then is just pretty much the wrong word to use. They're pretty much using the exact opposite of what it is they mean. And the law of reversal, well, it's a term coming, I don't know if it originally came from Aleister Crowley, but it was largely popularized by him. And then with this here in this post, you see that the Nonvoy, or Save the Children convoy, as they say here, are mentioned, and as well it says Canadian anxiety is being captured basically because of propaganda revolving around Russia and China. And it says that Canadian military needs to embrace artificial intelligence in its battle against its adversaries, and it's referring to Russia and China according to an article that is sourced through this post. But the thing is, the alternative that is suggested through this post is that Russia and China are aiding the US in a peaceful transition to natural law, which would inevitably lead to a peaceful transition across the world. Yeah, okay, whatever you say, because Russia and China are just as much in line with the Sustainable Development Goals as Canada or the United States. So, and Russia and China are part of what are called the BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And so, yeah, you can see the different Sustainable Development Goals here that they propagate. I'm not going to go over this anymore because I think I've pretty well proven the point here. So now let's see, is there any other image? Yeah, so this one is kind of weird here. It seems like they're kind of playing a weird, like, dialectic dilemma, if that makes any sense. So they apparently rescind this arrest warrant for Romana Didulo as if they had a arrest warrant placed for her, which I don't think I was able to find that. So they're rescinding some kind of arrest warrant that was in Public Order 947.1. And just so people are aware, I actually confronted Romana Didulo, this fake queen or whatever she is. She had a front organization where basically when you go to donate money and you click the See More option, the money actually goes to the Liberal Party of Canada. So, yeah, and when I questioned her about it, she just said that hackers were involved and wasn't able to mention any sort of name or organization to me. So Queen Romana Didulo is just a destructive liar, is what she is, and she has a very, we'll say, Waco, Texas type of scenario going on, I think, in Saskatchewan, where she has a facility that people enter and are not allowed to leave, and it appears like she's conducting different psychological warfare experiments. Yeah, this Romana Didulo is just something interesting. I don't even know how to describe her. I'll let people look at videos themselves just because I don't want to give this nutbar too much attention here. But as well, being that I never really kept up with her or anything, this is a video from last year, October 2022, and they're claiming that a follower of hers who goes by Charmaine Julie Vautour replaced Romana Didulo because she was given the title by somebody who goes by King of America. I don't even know who that is, all this fake royalty, but this fake royalty, if you will, just seems like an excuse to set up another movement that people can just blindly label as domestic terrorists, just like they do with people that speak about things like color of law or the birth certificate fraud. They use the term sovereign citizen, which is just a domestic terrorist category, is really what that term is. Not only that, but also an oxymoron, because you cannot be sovereign and be a citizen at the same time. It makes no sense, because to be a citizen, you're basically a servant of the corporation, for lack of better words. So, yeah, with this new appointment of a queen and, making out Romana Didulo to look like this bad person that Court of Ages is doing now, which, don't get me wrong, I don't think Romana Didulo is necessarily a great person or doing anything righteous, but all they're doing is doing exactly what operatives do, which is call each other out, playing the good cop, bad cop, or in this case, I'm going to say white hat, black hat. And I don't believe in those terms at all, nor do I believe white hats and black hats are a thing other than Freemasonic terminology. But this is the kind of ideology that people subscribe to, that follow this Romana Didulo or Charmaine Julie Vautour, probably this King David J. Carlson and his wife, Lady Sarah M.G. Carlson of Arizona, whatever. So when operatives call each other out, the reason why this actually benefits them is because you're typically picking one side of one operative versus another, and you're still playing their game, and you're not really calling out the full spectrum of the agenda, even if the call-outs that one operative is using to another are legitimate in and of themselves. It is still just forwarding their agenda, if you will, right? So, because you're not really tackling the grand scheme of things, if you will. So I'm just reopening this as I accidentally closed a tab, but this is Charmaine Julie Vautour, whatever you want to call her, whatever her name is, I don't know. But yeah, new queen, whatever. So, now moving forward, closing this tab here. So, yeah, now this is where things get really weird. The reason why things get weird here is we're going to talk about fake RFK Jr., if you will. And, well, I shouldn't really call him fake RFK Jr., as I really haven't done research on David Keith Quigley so much, but he's supposed to help these people aid in the transition to natural law, if you will, which I don't really trust this organization, and I don't trust anything that they're backing, so that would include this particular gentleman, David Keith Quigley, or otherwise calls himself JFK Jr., and I admittedly haven't really listened to any of his interviews, but he seems to be selling books and t-shirts and that kind of a thing, which is just pretty atypical of the so-called freedom fighters, if you will, in Canada, and probably the US is not much different. So I wouldn't be forking my money out, is what I would be saying, just as a piece of advice to that. So this right here is the New Age deception over here, the Gaia New Age deception. It says it is the responsibility of each human being today to choose between the force of darkness and the force of light, from darkness to light. Sounds like Freemasonry. Maurice Strong from Rio Earth Charter 1992, and that is the same year that I was both born and the same year that Agenda 21 was conceived. Alice Bailey and Blavatsky before her used these terms often. Their writings state that the force of darkness are those who adhere to the outdated Christian faith, those who continue along their separative paths of the one true God. The force of light, or Lucifer, in their view, is the inclusive New Age doctrine of a pagan pantheistic New World religion. In the New Age of Aquarius, there will be no room for the force of darkness and separativeness. Okay? So, the reason why I read this is because Adrien Thomas's political platform is somewhat interesting, and Rick did a great job going through his political platform here, and I actually used this as a large basis for my questioning for Adrien Thomas. So, Rick, if you watch this video, thank you for your presentations and all the hard work that you do. I have great respect for you. So, now sourcing Rick Walker here of Maverick Multimedia. He goes over the Thunderbird Nationalist Party, and in terms of my questioning with Adrien, he speaks a very good game, if you will, and what I'm saying by this is he is very good at speaking out against people like Klaus Schwab, New World Order, Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, etc. Yet all of that stuff is actually laid out within his political platform. And I'm going to explain some of these dangers here. So I don't think I have to explain what the Sustainable Development Goals are. But one thing I will say that was very big about his platform is nationalizing resources. And, you know, he's about Native American nationalism, which in and of itself, there isn't really a problem with that by itself at face value. But when you are nationalizing resources, that puts resources in the hands of whatever nation, in this case, the government of Canada, so they would have say over who uses resources and have a total monopoly over it. And if UNDRIP was actually going to be enforced, then having a native figurehead, if you will, for the Canadian government, Adrien Thomas would serve that role perfectly for them, is my point. And as well, there's stuff about climate change in there as well, which is BS. So all this stuff is propagated by AIN, the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, which I had mentioned are basically fake native groups, and you essentially purchase a pass for some of them, and you become what they describe as Métis. Sometimes some use indigenous as a term. It really doesn't matter, but all these definitions are gradually being changed for the purpose of land, resource rights, and generally control over the people, if I might say that in the most generalized term. So, also in terms of me interviewing Adrien, in my experience, he has said that he wants to make people angry because it starts a conversation. But my response to that is that people who are angry or scared are actually the most easily manipulated. And so you can obtain whatever it is you want from people who have high-strung emotions, is really what I'm getting at here. So, and Adrien and this Queen Romana Didulo and somebody who people probably know of named Jason Etsy, they serve as what a term that I've coined called the opposition's opposition. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is it's their goal to basically piss everybody off or divide everybody or cause some kind of tension among everybody, going from, you know, the liberal government, Antifa, or even the freedom movement on the opposite side of the polarity, if you will. It's their goal to anger, divide, or scare everyone, essentially, right? So, this is kind of interesting here, as what I'm going to show you is that this is a video of Matthew Venn here, showing that yes, he is aligned with Adrien, Cowboys and Indians here, and I'm going to go over why that term, Cowboys and Indians, in a second here, but this tab here, when it loads, this is the End the Indian Act walk, which I think is somewhat of a deceptive name because Adrien's role doesn't just simply have to do with ending the Indian Act, but it has to do with the New World Order if you actually look at his platform, really. And, you know, the thing too is in this video, Adrien uses the term Great Awakening. And now while he's not, using all the terms like, high vibrational energy or dismissing you if you question him by saying you're giving off low vibrational energy like Gordon does and some of the non-void, he does use the term Great Awakening, and I've noticed that this seems to be part of their script or mantra, if you will, just repeating a lot of QAnon New Age type of dialogue and rhetoric in what it is they're saying. And so bringing together Cowboys and Indians, for lack of better words, is what Adrien is doing. He utilizes New Age dialogue that basically was intended for the purpose of uniting religions, if you will, but for the purpose of uniting, I guess, races. I don't even like using that word because it's just a concept, but this is the goal of the Lucius Trust and Alice Bailey. I'm going to read here. It says, today human beings as a whole are so loudly invocative that the entire trend of the life of the hierarchy and its plans to date have been subjected to change, to postponement, as far as certain interior and purely hierarchical determinations are concerned, and to hastening of certain plans which were slated, if I may use such a word, to take place several centuries later than this, but which, owing to the unexpected preparedness of humanity, can take place not prematurely, really, but securely and in the fullness of time, the fullness of time as regards the particular planning with which we are dealing, is from now until the year 2025 AD, a brief period of time, indeed, in which to see the consummation of the larger purpose of the planetary logos, working through the three major centers within his body of manifestation. The purpose was threefold in nature. I have made this practical application and this immediate illustration of teaching Annette glamour, illusion, and Maya because the whole world problem has reached a crisis today, and because its clarification will be the outstanding theme of all progress, educational, religious, and economic, until 2025 AD. Interesting quote there. And so, like I said, once again, even though her purpose is uniting religions and the New World religion is really a part of it, they have to unite everything, so to speak. And so, in order to try turn cultures and even religions as one, Adrien's role is finding a way to unite what he describes as Cowboys and Indians. I don't really like using those terms myself, but whatever, to each their own. And then, lastly here, we see Colin Ross, who I have also made a video about, also using terms like the Great Awakening and stuff, just repeating the same mantra. And I have tied Colin Ross to the United Nations already in a video that I had made about him, which I'll be leaving in the description. I'm just going to save my breath speaking about that, as I've already done that. So now I'm just going to go over some of the last few images I have here. This is something here that I saw posted on Facebook, and I think this is the exact idea that I'm getting at. This is basically a revolutionary and very dangerous meme, where it's basically revolution or New World Order, yet revolutions are what lead to New World Orders in and of themselves, or tyrannical regimes, rather. So, and also using V for Vendetta or Guy Fawkes is just actually seriously stupid as far as I'm concerned, because when it comes down to it, like, how do I put it, rather, like, V or Guy Fawkes are looked at as heroes, but the reality is that Guy Fawkes was a Jesuit who attempted to blow up British Parliament, and so basically he attempted and failed, but in the movie V for Vendetta, when he successfully blows up British Parliament, everybody is walking out wearing a V mask. You're basically supporting the Jesuits without even realizing it, so to speak. And so you're just going into one co-opted movement, if you will, one controlled movement, and that's exactly what Anonymous really is. And the other big aspect here, I forgot to mention about Adrien's platform, which was not really described well, and he also didn't really elaborate well in the interview I did with him, but the gold standard that he was talking about, he didn't elaborate on, but once again, people that use the term like Great Awakening and Nasara, which is propagated in the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, the gold standard is really gold-backed NFTs on a blockchain system that QAnon people, Q people, whatever, follow the Great Awakening, called a quantum financial system, QFS. It's just another illusion, is what it is. And it's just another way. Great Awakening and Great Reset are really one and the same. And we can see that these people are not really original and package the same tricks and gimmicks. I mean, look at the similarities between Jake Angeli and Joshua Bigger, or goes by Mr. Freedom in Canada here. And then I just want to close this one off here now. The reason why I show Maggie here is because I spoke about direct democracy in some of my videos, and that's the kind of system that Switzerland uses. And direct democracy gets rid of or rather, it might not get rid of the representatives in and of itself, but instead of you voting and taking your ideas to representatives that you are quote-unquote elected, which are actually selected, you are basically, the illusion is given to the citizens that they are part of the governing structure in and of itself. And so direct democracy is preached through Maggie Braun here, and as well Civis for Freedom, which is an initiative that she is a part of that I have already covered in a few videos, actually. So I'm going to save my breath on that one, other than the fact is that direct democracy is just really a pathway toward tyranny and the New World Order. And we can see here with the hands, as above, so below. But if you're part of the cult of the blind, leading the blind, I think ass above, so below is more appropriate. And that's so spelled like S-E-W. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody for watching. And if people have questions, they can feel free to go in the comments there and write something publicly on YouTube, or they can message me on my Facebook account at Matt Unseated. No the in between, unlike my YouTube channel. So stay strong, everybody, and don't fall for the hopium. Your power is within you, and that's all you need to stand in. So thanks for watching, everybody, and take care of yourselves.